Welcome back to the Transition Times. This month, we'll cover career interest inventories, age-appropriate transition assessments, and how we can utilize an IPS document to write the transition section of an IEP. Let's take a sip and get started. Career interest inventories can be done to help students determine what areas they're interested in or to help narrow their focus. If your school utilizes Xello, there's what's called a Career Matchmaker Inventory that can be used to help students decide what they're interested in. However, sometimes students get matches that they don't agree with. This is where I suggest mynextmove.org.
MyNextMove, part of ONET, has 3 different areas that students can explore for different levels of career exploration. If students are unsure of what careers they are interested in, they can complete the interest profiler on the far right. If they know they're interested in a certain area, they can search by industry in the middle. And finally, if students know exactly what they want to do, they can research more about the career by searching for that specific career on the far left. ONET can be used to watch a video of the career, learn what knowledge, skills, personality, and abilities they need to work in this job, what kind of education it takes, and the job outlook. They can also explore similar careers. The great part of ONET is that if you have a student who wants to become a veterinarian technician, you can utilize ONET to tell you what skills a student needs to excel in this area of employment to assist you in filling out the questions on the measurable post-secondary section of the transition page.
Before we begin talking about transition assessments, I'd like to point out that there is an hour-long professional development session on the Google Classroom for Monday Night PD related specifically to transition assessments. If you have any further questions, be sure to check it out. The third question on the Indicator 13 checklist is there evidence that the measurable post-secondary goals were based on age-appropriate transition assessments? Just like we use assessments to determine our present levels of performance for our annual goals, the same goes for measurable post-secondary goals. The key to these transition assessments is that they are age appropriate. For example, if you have a high school age student who reads at the 3rd to 4th grade reading level, the transition assessment must be age appropriate for a high school student, but modified to be at the 3rd to 4th grade reading level.
Our age-appropriate transition assessments identify our students' preferences, interests, needs, and strengths, which we can then write goals from. As you can see from the transition service flowchart, the transition assessment drives everything else in the transition process.
This month's spotlight is how we can utilize a student's individualized plan of study or IPS document to help us write the transition section of the IEP.
When we look at the IEP requirements and how they line up with the IPS components, they both take into account post-secondary life. The IEP takes into account education or training, employment, which is similar to the IPS, but the IEP document also includes independent living if necessary for the student. Both the IEP and IPS document have to be reviewed and revised at least annually. We can utilize the career interest inventories used for the IPS document as transition assessments to help us write our measurable post-secondary goals. The extracurricular activities included in the IPS document can be used with the Coordinated Transition Services section if they align with the measurable post-secondary goals. The IPS requires that students evaluate what courses they need to complete to pursue post-secondary outcomes which align with our course of study portion of the IEP.
As you can tell, utilizing a student's IPS document can be very useful in writing your student's transition section of the IEP. Speak with the person in charge of IPS at your school so you can access your student's documents. That's it for this month's Transition Times. I'll see you all next month, but until then, sit back and take a sip.